Welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Entitled Parents Reddit video. In our first story, Karen called the cops on me at Tim Hortons. Let's jump right in. For some context, I live in a predominantly Catholic city where most people attend church on a regular basis. I, however, was not really raised Catholic or religious really, so I kinda stand out a little bit from most people. This all happened about 2 years ago when I was still in high school. My high school was just down the road from a Tim Hortons, and across the road from that is a pretty large church, the only one in the neighborhood I think. On Sunday, I decided to grab a coffee on my way to pick up a textbook for one of my classes. It was about 12 noon, so church had just ended, and there was a decently long lineup for the Tims. I'd been waiting in line for about 5 minutes when a woman walked up to me and started talking to me. It was a pretty normal conversation, but then she asked why she hadn't seen me that morning. I was confused since I had literally never spoken to this woman before. She told me that this Tim's belonged to the church, which it didn't actually. I casually explained that I did not attend the church she was talking about. She gave me a confused stare and muttered an "oh" before walking away. Skip forward to Tuesday. I was once again in that Tim's getting some lunch when the same lady walks up to me and starts to berate me for being at that Tim's. "I thought I told you this Tim's is for the church only." "Yeah, but it's just a Tim's. Anyone can come in here if they want to, though." "No, this Tim's is not for anyone who doesn't attend the church." "But the next Tim's is like 5 kilometers away." She continues to just yell at me in front of everyone in the Tim's. I was actually just going to leave and get a lunch from my school. Then she dropped the Karen bomb. "If you do not leave this Tim's right now, I'm going to call the police." I decided at that moment to just stand still and let her call the cops. About 10 minutes later, 2 officers show up. The Karen tells them that I am disrespecting her, disrespecting God, and disrespecting the church. I tell them that I'm just a hungry teenager trying to get my lunch, but the cops take her side and call both my parents and my school. My super awesome vice principal shows up and demands why he got a call from the police about one of his students. The officers tell him what's happening. My vice principal asks me if it's true, and I tell him that I was just trying to get some lunch. My vice principal asks the officers what laws I have broken, and they responded with some BS about harassment or something like that. My parents are called in and my mom tells the cop to flip off, and that I didn't do anything wrong, but Karen keeps insisting that I had been harassing her. Then one of the employees chirps in and starts to vouch for me. Eventually, the cops leave, and so do my parents. I get my lunch and my vice principal walks me back to school. I never ran into that lady after that, even though I made sure to get lunch from that Tim's as often as I could. Story number 2, entitled Parents at Baseball. It's just a game, people. So baseball is the one thing that I excelled at as a child. Because of this, I was always on a little league team and my parents were expected to be involved because that is pretty standard for the good players. Well, my dad is awesome and is the least competitive person you will ever meet. One week, our 2 coaches were both going to be very late to a game, so they put my dad in charge. My dad reluctantly agreed. Well, my dad decided that he was going to do a first-come, first-served method for determining positions and batting order, instead of basing it off of what would be the best for the team to win. The only exception was that our coach said that I was the starting pitcher. Well, we had a kid we will call Jason on our team. Jason was the nicest kid you'll meet, but he had a fairly severe case of fetal alcohol syndrome and was incredibly uncoordinated. Well, he showed up first, so my dad put him as batting leadoff. He wanted to pitch, but my dad said he couldn't, so Jason was put on first base. As would be the case, the less skilled players showed before the better kids. The star players, the kids of the 2 coaches, were the last to show, so they started the game on the bench. Well, a few parents were pissed. How dare my dad not start a winning team? How dare the bench warmers and right fielders play in the infield, blah blah blah. Most of the players and their families were happy that they got to play their favorite positions. The game went fine with the normal errors you would expect from a bunch of 12-year-olds, but obviously the problem families would freak. My dad pulled me out in the third when we were up by a comfortable amount and put Jason into pitch. One of the dads in the stand said, "Why would you put that blank in?" I have seen my dad mad, like actually mad, maybe 5 times in my life, and this was by far the worst. He went up to the fence and asked the guy if he had to pick on kids to feel like a man, and that if he wanted a real test, my dad would be happy to oblige. My dad was a pastor at this time, but he was a wilderness guide in Northern Ontario for years and is not a guy you flip with. He is intimidating as hell when he is angry, and that guy shrunk up real fast. I know the ump kicked the dad out, and I think he was actually banned from the park, but I can't remember. We ended up winning the game, and the kids loved it. Even though we won, enough parents complained that my dad was never asked to help again, which he considered a win. I could not believe how crappy parents could be towards kids who just wanted to have a good time. My parents never came to my games after this, which was really disappointing, especially when I was playing in high school. Story number 3, entitled Mother Tried to Ruin My Engagement. My boyfriend, who's 21, and myself, who's 22, invited and planned a small trip to the beach to celebrate my college graduation since there was no ceremony due to COVID. We invited my mom and my 16-year-old brother, as well as taking our dog. I was worried and talking to my boyfriend weeks in advance about how I'm worried about my mom acting out during the trip since she has a strong history of it. Doing things like disappearing, spending days in her room and not speaking, screaming at us in public, and starving herself so we will worry and feel bad. All of this back when we were little kids. Anyway, we are in Mexico for our trip since me and my boyfriend have traveled here before many times and both speak Spanish. Mexico is very COVID conscious, and we have been doing our part as well with masks on always, sanitizing and washing hands, social distancing, and only eating outside at non-crowded restaurants, plus 3/4 of us are vaccinated. This was my mom's first trip out of the country, and we were happy to give her that experience. Last night, we went to go eat at a nice restaurant. This was the restaurant where my boyfriend and I ate the first time we visited when we had just started dating. I knew he wanted to propose. He told me to get dressed up nice and just dropped a bunch of hints. I told my mom and brother as well so my mom wouldn't feel unprepared or underdressed. We get there and we of course want to eat outside because 1, COVID, and 2, we had done that when we first went there. She immediately begins complaining that it's too cold to eat outside. It's like 85 degrees since it's seaside, and tells us to go inside instead. We were annoyed, but we agreed. Immediately we could tell it was way too hot to eat in there. I tell her this and also remind her there's a special reason we want to be outside. She snaps at me that if we want to eat outside, we can, but she isn't going. So I say, okay, we will eat outside, not with any attitude, but in that way you handle a crappy customer in retail. As we go back to eat outside, she literally storms out of the restaurant crying. My poor younger brother chases after her, and I guess she was telling him I was making this trip all about me. Anyway, the kitchen is closing, so I order her and my brother some food. She comes back 20 minutes later and says that she's never doing a road trip with us again, and then of course refuses to eat even though she hadn't ate since 2 days prior due to her being mad at us that she couldn't bring weed. It's very illegal here and she'd go to prison, and she was complaining that she already wanted to go home to smoke. My boyfriend tells me in the car he's sad because he didn't feel like proposing in front of her since she was just sitting there oozing hatred, and we both felt sick. Anyway, I could have been a fiancé last night. Maybe some other time, I guess. Here's an update. Oh my god, thank you all for your kind words. I didn't expect this to blow up. We did get engaged. secluded on the beach looking for sea slugs with our pup. My mom later apologized, but I still feel very conflicted about it, and I definitely want her to go to therapy before ever meeting our kids, and I want to have a real open and honest discussion before our wedding. This behavior really isn't excusable or appropriate for anyone, but especially not a mother towards her daughter. For those of you asking why she was invited, it's because she would have been invited to my college graduation, and I wanted my brother to come. I am the only one in my family to even attend college, and I want my brother to see that it is possible for him as well. I had also hoped that after moving out at 18, or I should say being kicked out, that she would have grown up a bit, but we still clearly need space between us. To me, if anything, this proves to me that my future husband and I will be able to withstand anything and won't let anyone come between us. This is John from /Bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to be the first to know when the next one drops, subscribe and click on the notifications bell. We would love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.